I'm here in Paris trying out the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6. I'll have more to say about it once I've spent more time with it, but now that I've been using it, as I've been navigating Paris and working and taking notes and taking photos and testing out some of the new AI features, I want to give you my first impressions before we dive into a full review. So this is the Z Fold 6, this is the Z Fold 5. Both of them have a 7.6-inch display. These are both at full brightness right now, and to me, they pretty much look exactly the same. And one thing that also is consistent on both phones is the crease that runs down the middle. So you can see it's right here. I can kind of feel it, but it doesn't actually feel quite as noticeable as it does on the Z Fold 5. So Samsung did make some changes to the layers of the display and also the hinge this time around, which should reduce the crease. And I do think it does kind of accomplish that goal. Of course, the crease isn't completely invisible. It's still quite noticeable when you're looking at it, but it does feel a little bit better when you're scrolling past it. It doesn't feel as obvious as it does on the Z Fold 5. This has a bit more of a squared off shape. As you can see, the corners are very kind of pointy. It reminds me a lot of the Galaxy S24 Ultra, whereas the Z Fold 5 has these rounded corners. And where you can really notice the difference is when you look at the sides of the device as well. I feel like it makes it easier to grip, and also, this might be kind of silly, but it does make the phone feel more like maybe a notebook or a piece of paper or something else that is like square that I would be reading. So I really enjoy holding it. I enjoy that grip. And then if you look at the Z Fold 5 by comparison, it's a bit glossier and the corners are a little bit softer. They're kind of rounded. The cover screen is where you see some of the biggest differences when it comes to design. So the Z Fold 6 has a slightly larger screen. This is 6.3 inches compared to the Z Fold 5, which has a 6.2-inch screen. And I do feel like this overall feels a bit more like a regular phone. It's a bit more symmetrical compared to the Z Fold 5. You can also really tell that the bezels feel more even around the perimeter of the screen, whereas on the Z Fold 5, you kind of have like slimmer borders around these edges and thicker ones on top, which makes the screen feel not quite as symmetrical as the Z Fold 6 is. When you're looking at the screen all day, think about how many times you take out your phone. You really want something that feels natural and like a regular bar type smartphone when this is closed. And that's been my biggest complaint about the Z Fold and foldables in general so far, is that when this thing is closed, it feels clunky, the shape is a bit different. And when you want to do something quick on your phone, like maybe just send a text message or check your email real fast, you want something that just feels like a regular phone. So I think this is a step in the right direction. Of course, we're talking about a foldable here. It's still going to be thicker and heavier than your standard phone. But this is actually lighter than the Z Fold 5. That was one of the first things I noticed when I picked it up, is how much lighter it is. And you can tell holding them side by side. So I do think this is an improvement. Is it going to convince people to buy a foldable phone? Absolutely not. Now that said, this phone is very expensive. It's $1,900 this time around compared to $1,800. That's a $100 difference. So Samsung really does have to continue to make these improvements to make it worth that price. So I'm taking some photos of the Eiffel Tower right now. This is such a spectacular view. And since this is a foldable phone, I decided to see what kinds of shots I could get while kind of propping the phone up on its own, using the bottom half as sort of its own tripod. It's a little bit crooked, but it is a clean shot of the Eiffel Tower. The cameras are pretty much the same. You're still getting a 50 megapixel main camera, but what's different this time is the ultra wide camera. It's still a 12 megapixel sensor, but Samsung said that it's upgraded the sensor to a new version that's better at low light scenarios. And then of course there's the telephoto camera as well, which has a 10 megapixel sensor. Okay, so I'm gonna try the new Portrait Studio feature on the Z Fold 6. So as I tap this button, I can choose how I want this picture of myself to be stylized. I think I'm gonna try watercolor this time. And then I'm gonna press generate and see how it comes out. So basically what this is doing is it's analyzing this photo I took of myself, and it's kind of transforming it into a different style. And there's a few to choose from, like there's comic, there's watercolor. This isn't that bad, I have to say. Let's try 3D cartoon. In terms of picking up details about myself, this character has blue eyes, which I don't. So does this one. So I feel like that's, the hair I think is pretty accurate in this one in terms of the style and the color, which is great. But these all have blue eyes and I have brown eyes. I think this did the best job of making a portrait that kind of looks the most accurate. What are some other things to do nearby? So since I'm in Paris and I don't really know the area, I decided to take a picture of the Arc de Triomphe and send it to Gemini to see what else is nearby. And it did give me some suggestions for things that are in the area, which I do think is a bit quicker than if I had to open my phone, open Google, and type in fun things to do nearby. I guess I'll have to explore some of these recommendations. So after spending a day with the Z Fold 6, I really feel like this is a more polished version of the Z Fold 5. Like I said earlier, there's lots of quality of life improvements that make this feel like a more usable, more polished, more refined version of what Samsung was already doing. If you have a Z Fold 3 or earlier and you love it and you want something new, I feel like you will probably enjoy this device. If you're already unsure about foldables, or maybe you have a Z Fold 5, I wouldn't say this is worth the upgrade, but keep in mind this is not our review. I'll have a ton more to say about it once I've spent some quality time with the Z Fold 6, so be sure to tune in for the full review.